Hey everyone, it is late at night and I am Norman. It is time, once again, for some watch news. So we humans love to look at the future for creative inspiration. Nowadays this is often dark and skeptical, dystopian style, but that hasn't always been the case. In the past we looked toward the future with wide-eyed curiosity and keen on seeing the possibilities that tomorrow might hold. And the designs that were inspired from this attitude were absolutely amazing. I love me some retro future. But not all of our inspiration in the past was quite so beautiful. Case in point, Brutalism. So after World War II, when Britain was rebuilding itself after the war, a type of modernism surfaced there called Brutalism. And you would think that it gets its name from the blocky, concrete, brutal appearance of the architecture that came out of that movement, but apparently the name actually comes from the materials and whatnot that were used in the buildings. And that ties in with our first article tonight, which comes to us from Monochrome Watches. And this is a discussion and review of AP's Remaster 02. And I can't believe that AP put this watch out. Look at that watch. Oh, that watch is absolutely amazing looking. You can see by its harsh angles and edges how it is inspired by the Brutalism movement. I absolutely love its asymmetrical design and that crystal. It kind of looks like the cockpit of a spaceship or something. I love the silver and blue combination of the colorway. That strap looks absolutely amazing in conjunction to the dial. And just look at the atomic age style indices on this piece. The hour markers go from the center all the way out to the edge of the dial. So they have a silver and blue colorway as well as a yellow gold piece. And this is a smaller ladies' watch. I would assume they're marketing it as. And just look at it on the wrist. Now, if you're wearing it on your left wrist, I feel like it might be uncomfortable, being that it juts out to the right. But I'm left-handed, so it would be perfectly comfortable on me. You may need to send me one, AP. Actually, that case might be gold on the blue colorway, too. Kinda tough to tell in photos. I could have been wrong. But the only problem with these watches is they were made by AP, so I will never see one in person. Unless I go to an AD and there happens to be one there. And they're limited editions. So only 250 pieces are being made, and they retail for about $38,000. The case is 41 millimeters wide, but only 9.7 millimeters thick. Okay, so it's 18 karat sand gold. So I guess maybe that's why it's difficult to tell whether it's silver or gold. Maybe it's kind of a subtle gold color. The movement in these watches is the caliber 7129. The next article I have comes to us from Hodinkee, and this is a piece on 6 new swatches that have come out. And thankfully, no, they're not collaborative pieces with luxury Swiss brands in the swatch group. Nope, these swatches are in keeping with the old school designs that Swatch put out, way back in their heyday. These are bright, colorful, fun, fluorescent pieces, perfect for summertime. And they look absolutely amazing. These kinds of designs are exactly why I love Swatch so much. Just look at those dials. Even the larger swatch in the center of this picture looks really cool. They have clear cases, which I personally absolutely love. Most of my swatches that I own have clear cases. What's cool about this article is they even have some photos of the first chronographs that Swatch put out. I really like the black dial one. Super cool. but the colorful ones are fun as well. I love the piece with the purple strap and the one with the fluorescent green with stripes on it. The dial on that one looks really cool. I actually don't own any really colorful swatches. I probably ought to get one at some point. However, if you do like vintage swatches, you're definitely going to want to keep your eyes open for a video that I'll be doing soon, because they have a fatal flaw. So I'm not sure I'll be purchasing vintage swatches anymore, because it seems that nearly all of them have this problem. I've mentioned it in the past, but I'm going to be doing a dedicated video going over the issue. But these new swatches retail from $75 to $120, probably for the chronograph. And that's another cool thing about swatches. Their original style designs are still pretty accessible. I think all the new swatches that I own were all just under $100. The next article comes to us from Wrist Review, and this is about a new brand and their first watch. This piece also takes its inspiration from the future like the AP does, and just like the AP, this is a watch I would absolutely love to own, but I never will. I'll probably never see one in person either. The brand is Alto, and the watch is the Art 01. And just look at that piece. That is such a cool looking watch. The crystal on it looks absolutely phenomenal. I just love everything about this watch. The dial on it is crazy, those hands are amazing, and again, that crystal, wow. So apparently the brand's name stands for Art and Limited Time Objects. That's pretty cool. Oh, and get this, the founder, Thibaut Guitare, used to work for AP. Oh, These watches look like they're pretty thin, which is phenomenal. That crazy crystal is sapphire. It's kind of a squarish watch, and the case is 41 millimeters, so it might be a big beast on the wrist. But it just looks so cool. It really does. The dial is made of titanium, and even the display caseback is crazy on these watches. However, these watches are limited to 25 pieces currently, and they retail for almost $20,000. So yeah, we'll never see one of these. But man, they look good. The next article I have comes from the Venezianico. The next article I have comes to us from Venezianico. From the brand's website itself. And this piece is the Redentore Ultrablack 36. So does that mean the case size is 36 millimeters? These watches are amazingly minimalist. They almost make the museum look busy. They use an ultra black paint for the dial. And instead of a dot at the 12 o'clock like the museum has, these pieces have the brand's cross logo, which looks pretty cool. I love the Dauphine hands on these pieces. I absolutely love the minimalism of them. And they retail for around $500. So not terrible. However, there is one problem that I can see, at least in pictures, with these watches, and that is the thickness. In some shots, it looks like these watches are pretty thick, which I feel kind of flies in the face of the aesthetic and design of them. I feel like when you're going for a watch that looks like this, kind of a museum style, they should be nice and thin. Otherwise, it just doesn't seem right, to me personally. So if you have to use a mechanical movement that's kind of thick, I feel like it would be good to design the case so that it kind of angles down toward the wrist, giving the illusion of a thinner watch. But that's really the only beef that I personally have with these watches. I think they look absolutely amazing. I love those dials, but then again, I'm a sucker for absolute minimalism. The ultra black and silver just look so great together. The next article I have comes to us from Revolution Watch. And this is a write-up of the new space views. So they discuss the tuning fork movements of the past, and they go over the electrostatic movements of today. Sadly, I feel like Accutron has kind of dropped the ball on the space view because their newer pieces are just so expensive and so monstrously huge. Which would be fine if they did a reissue of the space view that was way more accurate to the past, more true to the designs of the past. And maybe they don't have to be quite as small as the original space views. I think those are 33 millimeters. But a 35 millimeter I think would be good. Something that is true to the vintage size and has that same exact aesthetic. Maybe a new improved tuning fork movement in them so that they even have that accurate to the past. Then I think you would have a great contemporary catalog. You would have the electrostatic movements, the movement of the future, the tuning fork movements, the movements of the retro future, and they're available to us as new pieces, not simply vintage ones that we find on eBay. But the electrostatic movements are pretty crazy. They have turbines that spin from your movements, and those cause electrostatic, as the name implies, which charges up capacitors in the watch. Kind of like solar-powered watches do, so those house the electricity that's generated, and the watch utilizes that. So they're ultra accurate, and I believe the seconds hand on them is perfectly smooth as well. Sadly, I've never had the opportunity to see one of these in person, but yeah, I just wish the case size had some different variety to it, and I wish the price point could be brought down a bit. A lot. But the original space views are brilliant. All of these articles are linked in the comments below, so if you want to read more about the electrostatic movement, be sure to check out the link to this article. And the last article that I have comes to us from Rob Report. And this is a discussion of terminology when it comes to vintage watches. And I thought it was a great read, because I've never really thought of additional terminology for older watches. In my mind, a watch is contemporary or vintage, and vintage just covers everything. But in this article, there was a discussion about neo-vintage versus vintage, and I kind of like the details of each of the terms. So neo-vintage would be pieces that are 20 to 40 years old, less than 20 are contemporary watches, and pieces that are over 40 years old are just full-blown vintage. So as time goes on, watches will shift from one category into the next, which is perfect. So I'm going to have to start keeping these terms in mind when I'm referring to older watches. However, maybe we need another category. What about watches that are over 100 years old? Would those just be antiques? So we would have contemporary, neo-vintage, vintage, and antique. But yeah, I thought this was a great write-up. You can check out the article in full. It also is linked in the description below. And there you have it, you are caught up on watch news. Thanks for watching.